So this is completely a dark room, like with the one-way mirror we see on shows like CSI or something like that, right?
Yeah, you can't see us, you can't hear us.
Okay. So we'll hear the API confessions in just a minute, huh?
And he's just reading the background for task 2 right now.
Okay.
Oh, this is the stuff on LCS. There's a fair bit, right?
Yeah. Event sync activity, invoke method activity, and parameter bindings, for the most part.
Did he start task 2 in the previous session?
No.
This is right. Right.
Yeah, that WinWF usability folder on your desktop.
That's the one
Yeah,
there, and then Mike Riston, and then task 2.
that's right. And if you need to, since you did write quite a bit of code for task 1 and 1A, which is under your task 1 folder, feel free to open that up at any time. If you want to copy and paste some of the code that you've already written into there, that's totally fine.
Sure.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and read task 2 out loud for me, and then just let me know, make sure that you understand, not that part, but the second page there.
The second page. This task requires you to set up the workflow to receive the name of the loan from the host, modify it, and output it to the console. Currently, the host sends the name of the loan to the workflow, and this step in this task requires you to receive the name of the loan from the host and output it to the console. The name of the loan submitted is. Next, within the workflow, modify the name of the loan string to include from the workflow. Then send the name back to the host as part of the approval notification output to the console. The loan has been approved. The new name of the loan is ... Okay, so I'm going to take a look at what's given to me here in this task. There is a communications interface that was set up, mentioned previously. I'm going to kind of scour through it and take a look at it, get an overview of what that is.
So are we on right now? Can you hear us?
There's that data exchange service that was in this kind of this little write-up. That's an interface called iLoan service. There's a loan approved.
So in this example, we actually give him a little bit of code to start off with?
Yes.
Okay.
So what we want him to do in this specific task is focus on understanding the communications infrastructure that we've provided, but write the workflow that maps to it. And the one following, we have him actually extend the communications infrastructure to validate that he understands all the moving parts of how it all works.
Okay. So just kind of give him a jump start here to get him initially started. So is this the local services communication model and workflow?
Yep, exactly. So this is a pretty straightforward example. Hopefully it exposes an event that
We hope, huh?
We'll find out in a second.
Base with the instance ID.
Sorry, I just want to see what
this guy is requiring. Then pass in the loan name.
So for example, you can tell already that he knew that if he calls base and passes the instance ID, that it's required by workflow message event args, right?
Okay.
So as you can see, well, people didn't understand what that means, right? Should we be exposing it that way or not?
So now we have loan ID, set get. Alright, so there's communications. Let's take a look at the program. This is what we had in part 1, where we're doing a new service, giving the workflow, we're adding the service that we created, the loan service, which is iLoan service. And let's see here. Loan service, okay. Remember, loan service is declared unless it's coming from somewhere. I'm not sure where loan service is coming from, but I'll figure that out.
See, for example, so like in our samples, we follow this format as well, right? So it's interesting just to say, okay, well, this person didn't understand where the loan service was defined, even though it's further down the file. So that's something we can go and take back and maybe factor into a different file.
Okay.
Or we can think about actually exposing it in a different way. Right, so if you look at the bottom there, you can see class loan service implements iLoan service, but he hasn't seen that. It's further down in the actual program.
Okay.
Alright, wait, one.
And so there's a lot of characteristics that might apply in this scenario, right? So maybe someone is just used to, you're typically working with, single file per class type scenario. some of the other samples show. So you basically just refactor some of the samples and some of the examples to show that. Okay.
We found that a lot of people got hung up on this fact. We read the way we did the samples.
Okay.
There's a loan approved with the string ID.
So the potential impact is not necessarily API changes all the time or object model changes for the technology, but they could even be just things like the documentation, the samples, just making it that much easier for somebody to get started.
Yeah. API is like the kind of core thing that we're focusing on, but there's other peripheral things that
Okay.
get impacted.
Very cool.
Familiar with the syntax. My experience level is C#. Okay, submit loan to workflow. That's the member function that we created. We call above, which then we go, okay, create a new loan event args. Pass in the instance ID and the name of the loan. Submit loan, which submit loan is a event call with the event. Basically, I'm calling the event from within the workflow. Within the program. This should be the workflow for the submit loan. All right, I'm going to go take a look at the workflow. See this?
Not a lot there.
Which is very simple. It's a sequential workflow, which we keep for simplicity. Workflow 1 just gives me an ID of it. Okay, so there's that. Let's do a quick compile, build the solution, hit was succeeded. I'm going to do my normal thing where I'm just going to go ahead and step through it, see what it does. Real quickly. Put the correct.
So Nancy, I hear you typing away. Are you kind of taking notes of all the verbal discussions? Oh, okay.
Yeah, what he's doing, what he's thinking, where he's going. Sometimes I write the code that he types, trying to get it all.
Here I'm setting up the event.
Are the participants always this vocal? Or do you sometimes have to kind of pry them to get a little bit?
Sometimes you definitely have to pry them and say, what is it that you're thinking? What are you trying to do? Remember to think out loud, but actually he's quite good.
Okay, very cool.
It goes through. Now I should go into this guy, right, create a new loan arguments, submit the loan, and the workflow is essentially saying it's completed, and for whatever reason I get a thing because the object reference not set to.
This is expected.
There is, yeah. So he hasn't actually. So we submitted the event into the workflow, but there's nothing in the workflow actually listening for it at this point.
Okay.
Right. So his task is to go define that step in the workflow.
There's an interface that hasn't been defined.
Basically, you go and add in an event sync activity. Is that how you do it?
You can hear him thinking through that now.
So if I go ahead and
So you guys ever just want to jump in sometimes and say, no, do it this way, or here, just write this one line of code?
Nancy tries to limit the hints that we give to the
Okay.
participants.
That's why this room is soundproof. The glass is pretty thick. It's like, oh, I can get through it.
Okay. And that's why she controls the mic, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
exchange.
Yeah, they want to give him hints a lot.
Yeah.
But when they're struggling, that's when we really find, what it is that they're struggling about. They vocalize it. We figure out, what is it that's tripping them up.
So before somebody gets up and just says, "Oh, okay, I'm leaving. I'm tired of this," you'll actually provide them a pointer. Oh, okay. Okay.
Just before that happens.
Just before that. Not any sooner.
Sometimes the hints are like, look at the samples. You need to check the other project that you created last time. So it's not like really direct kind of.
Alright, data exchange services. So this little reference sheet here. Here's looking for
So now he's looking through his little
possible data
overview
exchange,
document that we
select
gave him
data.
with a list of activities.
Okay.
State initialization.
Kind of a little cheat sheet, if you will.
Yeah.
Update web service response. Wait for data. Update data.
Is that something that's also in the documentation, or should be in the documentation? Yeah.
This document is something that's maybe it's the minimum that we think people need to know before it's reasonable to ask them to work in these tasks. So it's like it's taken from some of the documentation.
Okay.
So we wanted to help, but he didn't really search for anything.
No, he decided to look at the little overview doc instead.
He's reading the table with that.
And we have it in sync.
Let's see.
So the attendees have internet access as well? I mean, could they go and do a search and find forum entries from the product team and other folks to answer this? Hopefully.
He did say event sync.
I really hate, I wish this was in with Visual Studio. I've heard that help is outside of Visual Studio now, and that's going to be a pain.
That's not true, right?
Let's see.
Yeah.
Oh.
There's yeah, the good stuff.
Data exchange services attribute. Exchange.
This is just
This is a one file, right? Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
So in this case, is this the same documentation that's in the SDK for Beta 1?
Right.
Yes.
These are the beta 1 bits.
Beta 1 bits.
Data
Okay.
exchange attributes. Oh, that's annoying. Back here. Thank you.
That you're looking for in help.
I'm clueless right now, so that's why I'm looking for something. I'm just not getting the, like with the other way, the other task 1 or 2, I got it with the parameter being passed in, but I'm missing something totally here, and I'm just looking for an overview right now. On data exchange, possible a little example that would give me a clue into what I need to do, because I'm really right now clueless. Basically, data exchange service is what I was looking for, and all I got is this attribute class. And I was just looking for a high-level topic on data exchange services, and all I get is this attribute.
See, like
So they're looking for that a lot.
Yeah, that's great feedback, right?
Contextual
So it's like
stuff.
within we actually attribute class, or the attribute interface with the data exchange attributes.
For the class that
Feature
represents the data that gets exchanged? Or?
That's the interface that defines.
Okay.
Right. So, with the feature we call local communication services. So I'm sure if you look up communications or local communication service, anything in this documentation, you find that he'd find it. But
And then I've heard the term object connection services as well, right? So we're currently referred to as local communication services, but the attribute is a little bit different, huh?
yeah, but I mean, just having a link.
A link from here, to the contextual high-level information.
Call it data exchange.
That's what user programming.
Yeah, you can see I think he's just got, from what we heard him saying, he's got a completely different mental model about how to accomplish his task than the one that we've designed. He's not thinking, as you said, he's not thinking in those terms.
He wasn't thinking about activities, he's thinking about overriding the method and catching and things like
When
that.
he's thinking
Not
about passing
activity.
data, when he's thinking about passing data from a host to the service,
Right.
to the workflow, why would he think about handling events? It's like that just hasn't come into it at all. So it's unlikely he's going to look up an event sync activity.
Cool. Looks like we have another visitor here.
Oh, we found event sync.
Hey, Krishna. How's it going?
Good.
Cool. So, what's your role?
Oh, that's interesting. I work on roles and security.
Roles and security. So another participant here, or another person, observer, I should say, too.
And he is in
So
the
he found the
event sync
event sync
activity.
activity.
Cool.
Comical
Well, I'll tell you
Microsoft.
what I would normally do at this point, if this was out on the internet, I'd go to Google and just Google this.
Maybe it's
look for
there.
some kind of example. To know what I would do.
Have you encouraged
You can
him?
do that.
Alright. If it's out there. It might be out there, because I know this is out there somewhere.
Maybe on the community website.
Actually, my bet is that it pulls up Dennis's blog entry, because he did a blog entry on this just a few weeks ago.
It's true.
Yeah.
So this will be interesting.
Search, but, well.
I don't think he will come up
Event,
with
custom
there we go.
event.
Oh, it went to the forums, right?
Cool.
So WindowsWorkflow.net forums.
Creating a sequential workflow, the listen activity production can be used.
Yeah, I never called it event sync activity. I called it event sync, thankfully.
Look at that.
Creating a sequential.
So this is actually the online documentation,
Yeah.
Okay.
which should be the same docs, right?
Yeah.
Sequential. Creating workflow class. Okay. Sequential workflow. Rule conditions. Not what I'm looking for right now. Declaring workflow parameters. Alright, this is what we did last time.
Right.
Good, good.
Initialize component. I think this is a pretty vague subject. Listening for host events. Okay, now we're getting closer.
Whoa.
At this point, the workflow has received 2 parameters from the host application, evaluated each branch. Listen activity.
So this is what he should have been able to get to from the help that he was in. If it's the same documentation, right? At least there's a little bit more of a
This is,
high-level, conceptual type of information, how to use the event sync.
I think this is actually part of the tutorial piece of the doc, right? Yeah.
Problem is with this, I'm jumping in halfway through this tutorial with a whole load of stuff that needs to be have been done before this makes sense.
Yep.
Could be difficult to understand this outside of the context of anything else.
So, listen up. Activity approve, reject. Listen, approve, reject.
Yeah.
I'm still looking at the code, getting an idea, because I'm still a little bit lost. This example
Sure,
is
cool. Good.
very concise. Use the event sync activity.
For the NW,
Event handler. With a invoked event in order to perform additional logic within the workflow. Makes sense. Following code shows implementation of those methods. Approved. Vote. Approve event. Reject event. Parameters. Results. Results approved.
It's amazing that he found it.
Alright.
He went to this next,
Area
and he just didn't do other links as well. You want to find it in this page.
It's got a lot of code in this page. It's attractive. There must be a snippet in here that helps.
But what was interesting is actually this is the first result in the search that he clicked on. So
It was like down. No, actually, it was like the 3rd result. But he went there, and he's not looking at any other results.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Here's something. Alright, no. Alright. I'm gonna see if there's anything else.
All right.
There we go.
Creating a state machine, regular context service. Let's take a look at this one.
This is going to the forums here, huh?
And that other one.
Hopefully one that got answered and closed.
Yeah, I think I replied to this thread.
Event sync.
Oh no, this will be interesting. This is the thread that I'm
Oh, this is
thinking about.
this is a custom event.
No, but
Item service.
let's see if it scrolls down.
Still looking.
So Dennis, is this one you replied to?
Yeah, so if you went down to the bottom of that thread, you would have seen quite a bit more information that would help.
Groups.
But it's super useful to see how people even try to look for
The
information.
closest I was at. So I'm still looking for an example in Google. Now there are examples here on the computer itself. I guess I can go look at those.
Yes.
Mustafa behind me is saying, just do this, take that line. It's fine.
Because he created an event sync activity, and he's setting the properties on the event sync activity. He just needs to add it and make sure that the interface type is the same. So he's getting there, I think.
It's close.
Yes, Mustafa's been very vocal, and he's like, come on, just do it.
Looking at the name again, trying to figure out what I should name this if it's important or not. There's the data my loan events are. Build succeeded, a breakpoint there, a breakpoint there. Everywhere, breakpoint. Okay, here we go. Down the road. Again, we're in our workflow. We created our syncs, our type communications. Create this sync. Okay, guess I got past that point. Submit loan. At that point, come in.
It's like there's a misspell on that name.
Step into that guy, and he gets a no reference again.
That's because it wasn't added.
Actually, the error message was correct.
Which,
Oh yeah.
No, it's object reference.
Oh,
Not set
yes, it's
that up.
correct.
Yeah, it just can't take him to the right
Doesn't
place.
matter though.
that guy
That's the
out.
Microsoft filter. While you said what you told me is technically correct, it doesn't tell me anything.
Well, the error message was actually technically correct, but it didn't really help him. So
It's not detailed enough.
yeah, it's not detailed which object need to be set to an instance.
Event sync.
So would you say it's a base error message?
Still.
Yeah, it's a base error.
Needs to be
message,
derived
yeah.
from? Okay.
Need to set some properties.
We had a discussion yesterday about the null reference exception, right? Why should
And I would
Yeah,
expect,
yeah.
I guess this guy, once I set him up, he did run, that he would have set up the sync correctly. That's his handler. There he goes. Unless I need to add this guy. Add. Here comes the next question. Do I do add sync? Was that I was thinking sync? Or event handler sync? See, I'm avoiding
Activities! Activities!
Yeah, but
I think I gotta add.
you can see what he's
handler.
thinking, right? Like,
He's not thinking of it as an activity.
Yeah.
he doesn't understand. It hasn't been solidified in his mind that workflows are comprised of activities. Right? That's the underlying fundamental construct that we
Right.
try to communicate, and it hasn't registered yet, which is natural, right?
Dependency
He
event.
doesn't need to add
Let me see what he wants to add to what. So what is it that you're trying to do?
I haven't registered this sync to the workflow yet. I've created it, but I haven't done add parameters or add it to this workflow to basically let the workflow know that, hey, here's a name sync. I've created it, I've instantiated it, but I haven't added it to the workflow yet, and I'm trying to figure out how to add it to the workflow.
And in
At
prior
this time.
and in prior task, he added the code activity to workflow.
And parameters for the collection, and yeah.
And I was thinking that it would be, my thinking would be add sync or something.
But then it's not. I mean, he definitely is working, but in his mind, he's not thinking of the workflow's collection of
Event
activity.
sync. Used to handle communications.
Like, I guarantee if you gave him the hint, hey, don't forget that the workflow is a collection of activities, you get it in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Sequential workflow, that must not
Or
be there.
what he did for the code activity.
But he won't remember that. Just like, because then he'll just open the file to say, hey, remember that a workflow is a collection of activities.
Yeah, or maybe like, you want to add this activity to the workflow.
So if you remember that workflow is a bunch of activities, a collection of activities, and you created
Okay,
the code
that's a
activity
good hint.
previous
Send
and
activities.
Yeah.
Actually, we've done this before and it's still
Oh, this is an
wasn't.
activity. Man, I'm just not thinking today. I'm sorry.
But make sure that we have that capture, that we had to give him that
Yeah.
prompt.
yeah.
Because that confirms what you were saying.
That's right. Activities. Okay, let me think about
Almost
this. I know
glaring. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like,
But it's
event
back
sync
again.
thinking add sync. I was thinking sync was a part of the sequential workflow, not as an activity, but as a part of the workflow itself. I was thinking it's more of an is-a than it is a has-a. I mean, even though this is an is-a relationship, process is thinking that sequential workflow would already have syncing capability inside of it. And that's
Is
why
it rather than has it?
Yes, I guess. Why I would think that? No reason why. I don't know. All right, that probably fixed my problem. Let's continue on.
That's another thing. They
Succeeded.
participants usually blame
Now,
themselves for things.
let's try
So while
jumping
we're
in.
back here saying, you know, it's okay,
And
some
now
of the
I
stuff in the
probably
API maybe
throw an
isn't clear, or
exception
the
because I was
documentation isn't
expecting
clear.
because right
They
here,
will always say, oh, I'm just
we're
not
adding
thinking
it to
correctly, or I
workflow.
should have known that.
Feel like it's their fault. Yeah, and make
Maybe they'll go
assumptions.
back.
Yeah.
But we're actually getting good feedback from it.
Cool.
was going to step into that guy. We did something right because he made it through.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, at the time I called submit one, I didn't actually call it, but when I got to the end there,
There's the same
and there I have it. I think I have some success here.
Yeah.
All right.
Yabba dabba doo.
So essentially, we just tested 4 concepts, right? Like 3 or 4 concepts. One is, does he understand the plumbing that is the communications infrastructure? 2, does he understand how the workflow plays as part of that, right? In that communications. At a higher level, does he understand that activities are comprised of that workflow? How does he add it in there? And now we're going to see if he can actually start using some of the more detailed nuances of that activity.
Do you think if you understand the third concept of, workflow is just a collection of activities, would just made it a lot easier and a lot faster for him to do this? He would have known, go to event sync activity.
I'd say 90% of the time that he spent doing this was all just trying to figure out how does he capture the data that comes in, like what is the construct that sits in the workflow that does that. He didn't understand that it was an activity that did that.
Yeah.
Right, once he figured out that it was an activity, then how does he configure it, what are the kind of little bits that he has to flip.
And that's still an issue. Like, even though they understand that it's an activity, there is still the issue of what are the different properties I need to set and how do I use the activity. But yeah, that was a big part of what he was.
So maybe coming back to the way we typically explain activities is that they're really for control flow of an application and then communications, right? Just reinforcing that. Use activities for communications as well might really help.